A single-dad millionaire was stunned when a waitress saved his disabled son from kidnappers. Little did he know that her courageous act would unravel a dangerous plot and bind them together forever. Hello, my wonderful audience. Get ready for a story that will make your heart race. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're drawn into this journey, and leave a comment below to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. It's amazing to see viewers from all around the world joining us today. Owen had once believed he'd mastered the art of control. For 20 years, he transformed untouched land into sprawling, mixed-use developments where every brick was laid in its exact place. Every contract closed at precisely the right moment. He built an empire on instinct and sheer will. Yet the instant he looked at Finn, every shred of control within him dissolved. The little boy with tangled hair, eyes that couldn't see the light, yet attuned to sounds adults often overlooked. Finn loved the clink of a spoon on porcelain, the whisper of wind through the swinging door, and above all, the song of birds, a simple pleasure that was his entire world. Finn would never take a step without his father's hand. That dependence both broke Owen's heart and filled him with fear. Not fear of Finn's difference, but fear that he himself could never always be there to protect his son. That morning, they arrived at their familiar diner, a quiet place with worn wooden tables, and noises clear enough to make Finn feel safe. Owen chose a corner table. As always, he pulled out the chair for his son, then sat opposite him. Finn tilted his head to catch the cadence of approaching footsteps, estimating the server's distance at exactly 3 meters. Owen, meanwhile, opened his phone. A message from his Japanese partner stole his focus. His finger flicked restlessly across the screen, his eyes tense. He didn't notice the man who had just entered. The man wore a black coat, his hat brim pulled low. His gaze swept ceaselessly across the diner. No one paid him any attention, except Riley, the server standing at the counter. Her instincts, honed by a past she seldom spoke of, sensed that something was very wrong. The man moved silently toward the table where Finn sat, every motion light and decisive, as if he'd done this many times before. When he placed his hand on Finn's shoulder, no one in the diner reacted in time, except Riley. She did not scream. She did not let panic cloud her mind. Instead, her hand clenched the tray. She let it slip to the floor with a deafening crash. The sound drew every eye to her, and to the stranger as well. Seizing the moment, Riley strode forward to Finn's side. She positioned herself between the boy and the intruder. She did not push. She did not strike. She simply stood her ground, her gaze unwavering, her voice eerily calm. "What are you doing?" That question was not an interrogation. It served as a reminder that she had seen everything, and that no one would be allowed to harm this child. The man froze. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Then he turned and fled into the crowd outside without a word. Owen looked up only when Finn softly called his name. He turned to see Riley crouched beside his son, soothing him. The man in black had vanished into the street. His heart pounded, as if waking from a dream, not because the danger had passed, but because he, this father who believed he controlled everything, had failed to see the threat at his son's side. He stepped forward, looking first at Finn, then at Riley. She said nothing. She merely stood there, her eyes no longer hard, but softened in a way Owen couldn't recall ever seeing. In that moment, he realized, some people enter our lives not by reason, but by action. Some people whose instincts need no introduction, because their very presence is the clearest answer to what we have yet to understand. Riley did more than save Finn from a stranger. She reminded Owen that no contract could protect his child like a heart brave enough to act at the right moment. And Owen, who once built an entire world from scratch, finally understood. There are things we cannot control, but we can preserve. If we learn to look more closely, trust the right people, and have the courage to put down our phones when it matters most. Owen could not shake the image of that unfamiliar hand resting on Finn's shoulder. Those fingers, cold and calculating, had been perilously close to his son. Just half a second's faster decision could have taken everything away. What haunted him more than anything was that in that moment he had been buried in his phone, letting the real world slip by without his presence. If not for Riley, he dared not imagine what might have happened. That girl, the woman with calm eyes yet reflexes as swift as lightning, not only saved Finn, she forced Owen to reevaluate himself through a different lens, a flawed father. He began to learn about her, not out of cheap curiosity, but from a sense of owing something far greater than mere thanks. The diner manager hesitated at first, then finally spoke. Riley had once worked security at a major cybersecurity firm in Tucson. Her record boasted impressive professional achievements, but hidden between the lines was a story never mentioned in training sessions. The bank robbery, a situation spun out of control, a teammate killed. That person had been more than a colleague. She had been the only sister Riley had ever trusted completely. In that split second, Riley had frozen. A moment she'd never forgiven herself for. Afterward, she vanished from the industry, severed all ties, retreated into small jobs where her resume didn't matter. The diner was the only place offering her a quiet corner. No one asked questions. No one remembered her past. A place where she could simply be the tray bearer, not the survivor. When Owen came to express his gratitude, she merely nodded, said little. Her face betrayed no clear emotion, yet her eyes held a fleeting sadness, a worn sorrow that needed no explanation, for it had become part of her. Owen stood there, uncertain whether to place his hand over his heart or offer it for a handshake. Everything he had intended to say felt superfluous in the face of her serene silence. Finn stood beside his father, one hand clutching a small toy, the other quietly gripping Riley's. No warning, no instruction needed, just a child's pure trust in the person who had shielded him from danger. That touch made Riley hesitate. Her shoulders trembled slightly, not from fear, but because it had been so long since anyone had touched her without reservation, since anyone had trusted her instinctively. That emotion stirred something in Owen, not just gratitude, but a deep-seated impulse that perhaps she could not only save Finn once, but also help him grow stronger. He asked, without pressure, if she could teach Finn some basic self-defense, and not to turn him into a warrior, but to ensure that a blind child would no longer feel utterly helpless in the world. Riley was silent. What seemed like a simple request forced her to confront what she'd long avoided. Teaching someone to face danger would mean reliving what she couldn't in that split second. Then Finn's gaze lifted, his small hand still holding hers. In that moment, Riley felt an invisible thread, thin yet unmistakable, drawing her closer to the boy, and to the worried father at his side. She nodded. Not because she was ready, but because she understood that sometimes an outstretched arm needs no perfect answer. It only needs someone who won't turn away. And this time, she chose not to walk away. Owen's Scottsdale mansion was vast and orderly, every corner arranged meticulously as a testament to a life of organization and discipline. Yet Finn's room held its own rhythm. Not from chaos, but from the subtle traces of a world perceived through sound and touch. On the shelf, a model train sat precisely aligned, each car labeled in raised lettering. Beside the bed, thick braille books were stacked in the order Finn's hand would reach them. Everything in that room wasn't decorated to impress. It was arranged so a child who could not see the world might still live fully within it. Riley entered the room for the first time with undeniable caution, not because she didn't know what to do, but because this place stirred memories she had tried to forget. Finn sat still on the rug, his head tilted toward the sound of his father's voice echoing from afar. He listened, but did not respond. That habit ingrained like a reflex. She did not begin with a greeting. She simply sat down gently beside Finn, keeping enough distance not to startle him, yet close enough that if he chose to trust, she would be there. She started with the smallest element, sound. The echo of footsteps on hardwood, the soft rustle of turning pages, the wind whispering through a crack in the door. She offered no explanation. She merely created sound and waited for his reaction. Finn said nothing, yet his head began to turn in the direction of each noise. His fingers brushed the model train, then recoiled at the click of its wheels turning. Riley remained patient, allowing time to do its work, and time, as always, did not disappoint. In the following days, the lessons became more specific. She taught Finn to distinguish tonal qualities of voices, how a deep, resonant tone differs from a light, high pitch. She showed him the difference between the sound of a car reversing and the knock on a door as opposed to footsteps. Finn absorbed it all silently. He asked no questions, made no complaints, only offered a gradually clearer smile when he guessed correctly. That small smile became, for Riley, the most profound thank you she had ever received. One afternoon, Riley led Finn into the backyard. Her hand clasped his as reassurance, but never forcing. She guided him to where the wind chime hung, placed his hand upon it. As the breeze passed, the chime's gentle tinkle rang out, and she whispered for him to pay attention to its direction. Finn nodded, his small palm pressed firmly against the cool metal bar. Then, slowly, he began to turn his head toward the clearest ringing sound. She could not hide her pride, but what she did not expect was this. As she looked away for a moment, Finn's voice, small, tentative yet unmistakably real, rose from behind her. He called her name. "Riley!" She froze. Her heart skipped a beat. Then she turned. Finn, of course, was not looking at her, but his head had turned precisely in her direction. His lips pressed tight as though fearful of mispronouncing, yet in that voice there was both trust and longing. Owen, standing on the porch, witnessed it all. He was speechless. His chest tightened, not from pain, but from an emotion rising so swiftly he nearly lost his breath. Finn had called out the name of someone who was not his father, someone who had entered his life only recently, someone who had not tried to replace him in grand gestures, but who had opened to his son a door he himself had never reached. Riley didn't just teach Finn skills. She gave the boy something Owen, no matter how much money or power he had, could never buy: self-belief. A budding courage, enough for a vulnerable child to believe he was not merely someone to protect, but someone capable of understanding, feeling, and responding to the world in his own way. The three of them said nothing more that evening, but from the moment Finn called her name, Riley knew she was no longer on the outside, and Owen realized for the first time in a long while he no longer felt alone in the journey of protecting his son. Dear audience, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water, then stay tuned for the next surprising twists. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always a thrill to see viewers from around the world joining us today. Comment number 1 if you enjoyed this story, so we can continue bringing you more great tales. Owen found himself looking at Riley with new eyes, first with gratitude, then with admiration, and now with something deeper, hard to name. She made no fuss, never sought attention, yet she had a way of making Finn laugh in the most ordinary moments. A tinkling giggle when Riley imitated a robot's voice, a bright smile when she asked Finn to guess the rhythm of footsteps outside. Finn, once withdrawn, began to look forward to each lesson with her, as if it were the only time of day when the world made sense. Owen watched it all. Every small change in his son, the light in Finn's eyes whenever Riley entered the room, the gentle smile at the corner of his lips when he sensed her presence. And he knew, silently, that not everyone could do that. Not everyone could coax such a natural laugh from a blind child. That evening, in Owen's real estate office, the two sat side by side, the glow from the computer screen illuminating their serious faces. They were reviewing security footage from the diner where the incident with Finn had occurred. Riley's eyes were fixed on the screen as frames flicked by until she paused on one, the man in black. He hadn't just appeared at the diner. Riley recognized him from the construction site of one of Owen's land projects. An ordinary observer would see nothing out of the ordinary, but with her security background, Riley instantly noted his deliberate movements, his practiced evasion, the targeted surveillance of someone trained. Owen looked at her, tension in his face. He had never considered that possibility, a kidnapping staged to apply business pressure. Riley spoke little. She simply provided timestamps, data from traffic cameras, and a few industry contacts she still maintained. Within hours, every thread led back to the same person, a rival who had long clashed with Owen over a tens of millions property deal. He had once threatened to take away Owen's most precious asset. In the heavy air of truths unfolding, Owen turned to Riley. He spoke no lengthy words. He simply took her hand, the grip neither tight nor pleading, merely a way to hold on to the feeling that he was not alone. Their eyes met. In that moment, without words, they understood that something greater than gratitude was forming. A silence stretched on. Then he leaned in, a gentle kiss, neither rushed nor forceful, but enough to send Riley's heart reeling. She stepped back, her eyes filled with emotion, but her voice caught. The words slipped out so softly it was as if she feared to hear them herself. "I can't let anyone lean on me, only to fail later." She did not wait for Owen's reply. She stood and hurried from the office, leaving behind a look of profound disappointment. The next morning, Finn sat beside the familiar wind chime. He no longer touched it. He didn't ask about the wind's direction. He didn't reach out for its sound. Riley did not come, and for Finn, that was enough to make the world feel unbearably quiet. Owen sat at a distance, watching in silence. No one spoke, but he knew that Finn was waiting, not for a lesson, but for a person. Riley had become a cherished part of their daily rhythm, a vital piece that made the blind boy feel seen in a uniquely special way. Owen realized that some people cannot be replaced by skill or money. Riley was part of the transformation in his son, the door that led Finn from timidity to courage. And now, as she vanished, that door was slowly closing. He knew what he had to do, not because he needed her in business, but because Finn needed her to believe in himself. And perhaps he needed her too, to believe that, no matter how heavy the past, one can still be loved once more. Owen refused to give up. He believed that to regain Riley's trust, The only thing he could do was bring his son back to the place that had changed their lives, the diner where it all began. Finn, the blind boy whose eyes no longer saw light, but whose soul longed deeply to connect, sat upright beside his father. In his arms, he held tightly a small model train, a gift he had made himself, its colors imperfect but filled with gratitude. The two stepped inside. In that moment, it was hard to describe the feeling in Owen's chest. He didn't just hope Riley would return. He hoped she would see the potential, the love, the quiet strength this little boy carried with him. The door closed behind them. The familiar air of the diner was now thick with tension. Riley was wiping the counter, her hair loose and disheveled, her sunken eyes betraying a fatigue that had never truly left. She stood there, an image of someone who had endured too much to ever fully let her guard down. And then, everything paused. She looked at Finn. The boy held out his model train. The first smile in days formed on Riley's lips. A hesitant smile. Just a few minutes. But enough for Owen to feel every ounce of anxiety begin to dissolve. Finn sat immersed in the emotion of seeing her again. Those sightless eyes seemed to catch a glimmer of love. But the tension remained. Riley hadn't spoken. The tears lingered just beneath the surface. She realized that something had begun to bloom. Yet alongside it came a fear, the fear of being swept away by a closeness too overwhelming to control. Suddenly, a car stopped outside the diner. Time seemed to slow. Riley's brow furrowed. She recognized the silhouette. The man in black. The same man who had placed his hand on Finn's shoulder. A chilling sensation crept through her body. Without hesitation, she reacted, instincts from her former life rising sharply. Riley quickly pulled Finn and Owen into the kitchen, the one place no one would immediately think to look, a place where shadows offered a split-second advantage. Without a word, she dialed the police, raising her phone to capture the license plate. Her voice remained steady, void of panic. In those moments, Owen understood. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a woman who had once been trained to face danger, who had once lost someone she loved, and who now stood ready to protect a child like Finn with fearless, unconditional resolve. The vehicle crept away. Police lights flared in the distance. Officers arrived just in time. The man in black was apprehended outside the diner. Handcuffed, restrained. Everything became clearer. A conspiracy was exposed. A shadowy figure from Owen's past, a business rival, nameless but relentless, had tried to apply pressure by threatening what Owen held most dear. Dark motives. A precise target. In that moment, Owen realized he hadn't just been under attack in business, but at the heart of his family. And Riley, she had no idea that in the middle of it all, Owen had begun to wish she'd be by his side every day. More incredible still, the ordeal wasn't over. In the chaos, Finn heard something strange by the back door of the kitchen. He couldn't see, but he could feel the lightness of footsteps. He quickly tugged Riley's hand, a small, firm gesture. Riley turned, reading the signal like a lifeline. She stepped back just in time to evade an ambush as another man lunged forward. She spun, threw a sharp strike, blocking him before police backup rushed in. It all happened in seconds, seconds that felt like forever. Owen stood outside the kitchen doorway, his heart clenched once more. At last, as things settled, the second man was arrested. Aggressive, masked, stumbling as police took him into custody. Brighter than the flashing lights of the rescue vehicles was the unwavering look in Riley's eyes as she turned to Finn. She wrapped him in her arms, as if the world had finally become safe because she was there. Owen stepped closer. He didn't need to say thank you. A gentle embrace brought them closer than any words ever could. He lowered his head, his eyes never leaving Riley's, and whispered softly, "You didn't just save my son. You saved me." Riley blinked, one final tear slipping free, not from pain, but from release. In that moment, she realized she no longer had to run from the past. She no longer had to fear that love or trust would only lead to another failure. Finn nestled quietly in her arms, feeling the strong beat of her heart, and offered a gentle smile. He had witnessed everything unfold from the quiet corner where he always listened. He didn't speak, but his eyes were enough for Riley to understand. He was no longer silent. He now had a protector, a friend, and someone who made him believe he mattered. Owen and Riley stood side by side as the police completed the arrest. A quiet heat still lingered between them, like an invisible current of connection. A heart once too guarded was slowly beginning to open. That small boy, in his silence, had brought them together, not just with affection, but with peace. A peace neither father nor son had known without her. They said nothing more. No words were needed. Only the presence of one another. A man who once believed he could control everything had come to understand that love and gratitude must be lived to truly have power. A woman who once drowned in her painful past now knew she was worthy of existing and of being trusted. And a little boy, through his silence, spoke the whole story. That some people don't come into our lives just to save us once, but to become family. That day, inside the quiet villa in Arizona, the warm light from the lamps couldn't compare to the glow shining in the eyes of the three people standing side by side. It wasn't the light of wealth, it was the light of commitment, forged through danger, woven from moments of trial. Owen knelt before Riley, a ring in his hand, not just a symbol of love, but a testament to a long journey marked by pain and hope. The ring was engraved with a tiny wind chime, once a cherished toy Finn clung to in those early days when he was learning to see the world through sound. Owen had kept it carefully, polished it, and now held it out in front of Riley. The delicate etchings seemed to trace the path they had traveled together, the shy beginnings, the skipped heartbeats in moments of danger, and at last, the seconds they had dared to live truthfully. Owen didn't say much. His voice, low and trembling with emotion and sincerity, carried more weight than any long speech. "I can't promise you the world, but I promise to spend my life protecting you and Finn, the way you've protected us." The words seemed to still the air. Riley's heart paused for a beat, overwhelmed. Her fingers moved slowly. She slid the ring onto her hand, something Riley never thought she'd allow herself to do. It meant she was choosing to believe in a happiness she had never dared to dream of. Her eyes shimmered, moist with emotion, and she gave a small nod. It wasn't hesitation, it was courageous surrender. Finn, the small boy with black hair, stood between them. He held both their hands, tiny hands, yet firm. And the moment he tilted his head slightly, the familiar sound of the wind chime rang out. A soft jingle, like a blessing, like an invisible affirmation that a new family had just taken root. No one said anything else. There was no need. Only presence remained. A man who had once been swept up by power now found the greatest treasure, a real family. A woman who had once lived in the shadow of her past now knew she deserved to be protected. And a child who had once stayed silent out of fear now understood he was not alone in his vulnerability. Emotions surged. Owen felt the steady rhythm of Finn's heart, the firm grip of Riley's hand. He knew then that real love didn't have to sparkle like diamonds. It just needed to be peaceful enough to heal old wounds, even the kind buried deep in the soul, the kind that had watched Riley walk away once, afraid she'd vanish forever. Riley looked at Owen, then at Finn. There was thoughtfulness, a quiet breath, a lesson slowly taking shape in her heart. That sometimes being human doesn't mean being the strongest. What matters more is having the courage to open your heart, to give someone the chance to protect you, and to be protected in return. And it was that kind of bravery that reawakened a sense of safety she thought she'd lost forever. Finn held their hands tightly, eyes fixed on the ring. He might not have fully understood its meaning, but he could feel that life was no longer lonely. He believed that from now on, every moment would carry meaning, worth listening to, worth feeling, and worth being loved in. The story ends, but it doesn't close. It's the beginning of a new chapter, for three people who had once been broken, now reunited in family. Their love isn't flashy. It's quiet, enduring, and strong enough to overcome every scheme, every shadow of the past. Sometimes strength doesn't lie in doing everything alone. It lies in letting someone walk beside you, protect you, and love you. When we allow ourselves to trust, we also give ourselves more strength than we ever imagined. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, comment to share how it made you feel, and tell us where in the U.S. you're watching from and what time it is. And if you found the story meaningful, please share it with your loved ones and friends, because someone out there may also need to believe that they are not alone. Life is a journey. Let honest connection light up the darkest roads.